Hi and welcome to another Building Pulse, brought to you by High Performer Building. We are all about showcasing and advocating for innovation in the construction sector. Innovation in products, innovation in systems, innovation in everything. And we are keen to partner with you guys that are out there who are not the people that are just wanting to do the same old, but the people who are going, how do I do things differently? How can I build faster? How can I build better? And yes, build cheaper, but not just for the sake of cutting corners and having a poorer product, but getting smart about how you're doing things and producing a quality outcome that is cost effective. So look, if you're just interested in that whole wider space, we would love to be having that conversation with you, because we want to do everything we can from all aspects in this industry to encourage innovation. And I'm going to bring in Cameron Bagrie soon and have a look at the economy, but that is actually one of the things that comes up, is the importance of innovation, both for the country, but especially for the construction sector. We form a big part of the New Zealand economy, and we have got to be leaders in doing things differently and driving change and taking risks, and constantly trying to improve what we're doing. And that's going to start with people like yourselves making a personal decision to change the way you're approaching what you're doing. So look, get in touch, and we'd love to have a cup of tea or a beer out here in the showroom with you, and chew the fat about your business, your development, your architecture firm, and what you're doing and what you're trying to do and how it can support you in that. Anyone who's trying to do something different, we are excited to hear from you. So that's enough rambling from me, but let's go ahead and bring Cameron in and get the latest update. Inflation's currently, I had a quick check, and it's sitting at 2.2%, which is well within, obviously, the targeted rate. Obviously, that's overall, and you're going to have some thoughts around the breakdown of that. And OCR 4.75 with an announcement next week. What's your predictions, mate? Where are we sitting? Where are we going?
Well, the economy's been beaten up a lot. And when the economy gets beaten out a lot, you take away pricing pressure. Yeah, it's just difficult to pass on price increases. And as we're starting to see unemployment move up, that's dampening wage inflation as well. So all the directional signals are that the Reserve Bank is going to move not just headline inflation. They need to get non-tradable inflation, which is still up towards 5%, on a much more sustainable trajectory. It's coming down, so it's giving them the comfort that they're going to get back into a more reasonable zone. And I guess you got to remember that monetary policy works with a pretty big lag, and what we've got at the moment is still monetary policy that's really tight. So the Reserve Bank is just taking monetary policy back towards what's called a more normal or neutral conditions. And that's the OCR around 3 to 3.5. When you're a long way away from it, which is what we've been, you can take bigger steps in the first instance to get a little bit closer. So that was 150, and it looks like we're going to get another 50. But they'll moderate the pace of easing over 2025.
Right. So you're thinking we'll probably get another 50, and then a series of sort of 0.25s, so that the trajectory is on its way down, but at a more steady pace that's less shocking to the economy in the other direction.
Yeah, well, there's no need to have monetary policy as tight as what it's been. But you don't want to be loosening conditions either, because non-tradable inflation was a long way from where it needs to be. We've relied on what's called tradable, which is imported inflation, to get the headline inflation rate down. And of course, what we know with imported inflation is that it can turn on a dime. We wouldn't want to see another global cost shock come through the system.
Yep.
So yeah, they're in a pretty good zone at the moment. We did see inflation expectations, for the 2, the 5, and the 10-year popped up a little bit in the Reserve Bank's last survey. Yeah, but they popped up from 2 to 2.2. Yeah, so
Right.
2.2 is still pretty close to 2. Yeah, so
Yeah.
there's just really good signs that we're on a sustainable path to having inflation around 2%.
Yep. And what would bring that non-tradables down? And is there a risk of, in going after bringing the non-tradables down, having kind of overcooking it on the tradable side of things? How does that piece work? Just remind us all the difference between tradables and non-tradable.
Yeah, so tradable is basically stuff that goes either to or from across the border. Yeah.
Right.
In and out of the country. Yeah. Non-tradable is your domestic inflation pulse.
Right.
And there's some importer items feed into that as well.
Yeah.
But the big ones there that typically drive inflation are things like rents. Yeah, they're things like construction costs.
Yep.
Yeah, how much it costs to build a house. You've got your energy prices. And then you've got items such as local authority rates.
Yep.
Which are insurance, recreation charges, all your dump fees, all this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
All right. And that non-tradable inflation has historically averaged around 3%. And tradable has averaged around 1%. And the combination of the two has worked out to be around 2%.
Right.
Yeah. One of the big issues going forward in this world that's less globalized, less friendly, where we're seeing offshoring, nearshoring, friendshoring, a bit of a bias towards producing it at home, is the global manufacturing sector going to be as efficient as what we've been used to? Because we've just been sourcing all this cheap stuff out of China.
Yeah.
Decades, and it's helped keep global inflation really low. And when you have had global inflation really low, of course, interest rates have been on the south side of neutral.
So with that then, so just remind me so the normally 1% and 3%, what are they at the moment?
The non-trade at the moment's at 4.9, and tradable is a negative number.
Wow. Wow.
And well, a lot of that's been oil.
Right. So then the inevitable question that we have right now is, what sort of effects would we expect to take place with a Trump government?
Well, there's a couple of themes going on. Number one, is he bluffing or serious about imposing a whole lot of tariffs? And he's pointing the finger pretty aggressively at China.
Correct.
And he's also talking about putting potentially 20% tariffs on all other imported items.
Yeah.
Now, that's not great for export nations such as New Zealand. Yeah, because it forces the price of your items up and it makes you less competitive in that American market.
Yeah.
It makes absolutely no economic sense, but it's politics.
Right.
And it's about protecting American jobs. Ultimately, what happens is that you might protect some American jobs, but consumers end up paying for a higher price on the other side.
So what does that effectively do to our tradable? Does that push it up?
Well, that will just, the risk with protectionism is that once one country starts, everybody follows. Right? And then that's going to feed into inflation. Yeah, we've also seen in the past couple of weeks, the American interest rate market has started to dial back the degree by which the Federal Reserve is going to be cutting interest rates. And it's just because the economic data has been stronger. Retail sales the last couple of months have been good. There is a general expectation that your Trump is potentially going to put tax cuts into people's pockets. How he's going to finance that with the state of the US deficit is still a $1 million question. But that's had the effect of lifting longer term interest rates. So US 10-year bond got down to 3.7%. It's now back up at around 4.4%.
Right.
And as there is firm expectations the Reserve Bank here is going to be cutting rates, and less firm expectations the Fed's going to be cutting rates, in December looks like it's going to be a line walk call. Yeah, that's pushed the New Zealand dollar back below 60 cents.
Yeah.
Yeah, good for the exporters, but not so great for importers.
Yeah, right. So given the fact that our tradable inflation is a negative number, does that mean we have some kind of buffer room there, or it really comes down to the balance of the two figures in terms of where our overall kind of costs land?
To be on top of inflation, the Reserve Bank needs to be on top of domestic inflation, which is non-tradable.
Right.
And it's directionally headed low, which is what they want to see.
We need, yeah.
But 4.9 is a long way away from where it needs to be.
Yeah.
But given the economic signals we're seeing out there, it's difficult to pass on price increases.
Mm.
And non-economically sensitive areas such as insurance and local authority rates and energy bills, we'll still see some jumps in there. But the rental market for housing is very clearly softening. Construction cost inflation is being basically eliminated. It's hard to pass on price increases at the moment when there's not an awful lot of demand out there. You've got to sharpen the pencil.
Yeah.
So we're in a bit of a transition period where a lot of the soft economic indicators, these things from various activity surveys, the ANZ Business Outlook, NZIR quarterly survey of business opinion. If you look in the rearview mirror, expected actual activity was awful. When firms are asked about the next 6 months, they're becoming a lot more upbeat that they'll be reporting positive numbers again. Now, we've started to see a little bit of a lift up come through in retail sales. Foot traffic is better within the property market. Auction clearance rates are improving. We saw a bit of a pickup in the last month. Days to sell popped down. Volumes were up, but prices didn't really move. But prices tends to be the last indicator.
Right.
So we are moving back into a space where we're seeing positive growth. Right. From here, just because you're seeing growth does not mean all your problems are going to go away, because for a lot of firms, you're still not going to be at a satisfactory level of activity.
Yeah.
It'll typically take 6 to 9 to 12 months for those levels of activity to get back up. The other thing that I'm watching pretty closely is just what we're doing in regard to productivity growth. Because productivity growth, it's going to have a big impact on the durability and the shape of the economic push that we're now setting out. If we do not get productivity growth up, we're going to run into capacity constraints pretty quickly.
That'd be one of the hardest things to move, wouldn't it? And like the slowest impacting, but arguably the most important. And
some levers are going to take a hell of a long time to fix. You just have a look at, we still suffer from road conitis. We're seeing all these various state highways are shutting. I see between Wairua and, is it Turingi? 2 months. That's going to be shut. What's that going to add? An extra 100K or something going the other way around the lake if you're coming by Taupo? That just adds to the economic efficiency. We're trying to improve education, but that's going to take time. We are now starting to see a lot more cost out programs that are starting to come through. So
Yeah.
the unemployment rate is going to continue to move up. Yeah, I
I
think
was
for
going to
another.
ask about where that's at, and is it, has it plateaued? Where do you?
Well, it's at 4.8, which is historically still pretty low.
Right.
Yeah, we think it's going to 5.5.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll see. Yeah, hours worked will be a little bit more correlated with GDP as opposed to taking on staff in the first instance when firms start to see things picking up. Yeah, I think a lot of businesses are still looking at right sizing their cost structures.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's that sort of deposit being put down on your productivity cycle.
Does that unemployment pressure actually feed into productivity in terms of, we've had to let people go, but there's still so much work to do, and everybody essentially has to work a bit harder. Does that effectively increase the productivity rate?
Well, what we've seen, firms hoarded labour over 2022 and into 2023.
Mm-hmm.
When things were slowing up, because they'd struggled to get staff for such a long time, they thought, we'll hold on to them and we're going to ride this thing out. And 2024, we'll be back on track.
Yeah.
Yeah. We were never going to be back on track in 2024 because we hadn't broken the back of inflation.
Mm.
You needed to break the back of the economy. So it
Yeah.
was always going to be a tougher year. And
Yeah.
firms have now, woken up to the fact that they just can't continue to hold the labour
No.
because it's hitting the bottom line. If you ever look at the performance of the New Zealand equity market compared to global peers, it's been dreadful.
Right.
The United States equity market, okay, they got the Magnificent Seven and all this sort of stuff. They're a lot more tech savvy, but they've been getting 2% productivity growth.
Mm.
Our productivity growth has been a negative number for the past few years. Yeah. Right? And if you look at the average for the past decade, 0.2% per year.
So
you're moving sideways.
yeah. So what is required though? Like it.
There's a whole lot of areas that encompass, driving productivity. The latest OECD report on New Zealand talked very openly about the importance of competition.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because when you got competition, you're forced to be on your game.
Yeah.
You can't hide. You've got to adapt. You've got to innovate. You've got to be up with best practice.
Yeah.
You go back to the 2022 Economic Survey in New Zealand. They talked about poor management practices, poor governance, lack of AI uptake. Was holding New Zealand back. New Zealand's become very, you call it safe or low risk in regard to how we like to go about things.
Yeah.
And there's some positives to that, but you're giving away the upside.
Yeah.
You're not innovating. You're not up there with the world's best practice. And because we've got a whole lot of industries here that are somewhat protected from real competitive forces, it's a pretty nice, complacent little economic model. The problem is that complacent economic model doesn't raise living standards. If you're not raising living standards, the younger generation are going to depart.
Yeah. It's not surprising. I mean, this is one of the things that drives us is seeing innovation take place. And obviously high performer building is primarily a product story, but we're talking every day with developers and things around, building methodology, supply chain methodology. How do we innovate? Not just the process or the products, but everything that we do. And it's pretty critical when you look at the construction sector, how it works, and the weight that this industry has on the wider economy is phenomenal. And there's still a lot of things to get right from a governance and a compliance and council side of things that, are in the works, but are, taking their time to come through. But man, do we need to make sure that the firms in the industry are ready to adapt and change and push the boundaries, because really our industry is typically pretty complacent. We would rather just keep doing what we've done, and let other people kind of fix the problems for us,
Yeah, well, it's the great adage about New Zealand, the three Bs, the Bex, the boat, and the BMW.
Yeah.
So that's the aspiration. Life's pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah, personal view, we need to take a little bit more of a lead from Australia.
Right.
Yeah, they're just a lot more hungry for stuff. But yeah, the Prime Minister's been talking about, getting an environment back where people want to take risk.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of things that need to take place in that. And some of it's, there's some important things going on at the moment, such as this inquiry into banking.
Yeah.
Yeah, banks have become effectively more and more like building societies where they're just lending on the home. And
Yeah.
you get a lot more bang for your buck productivity-wise when you're writing a business loan. Businesses, are the engine room out there, but we've seen in 2000 and the year 2000, 50% of bank loans were home loans. It's now 63.
Yeah.
Right, so all the investments going into the low productive asset.
Yeah.
And I thought we would have got a little bit more out of this bank inquiry, but it just hasn't been hitting the mark.
Why do you think that is?
Oh, one of it is that I don't think FEC members really understand the crux of the issues. There's nothing wrong with the banks making a lot of money. But if you're making a lot of money, you're pricing for risk. Make sure you're taking some risk.
Yeah.
Right. We've just gone through what people are telling me is the toughest economic climate since the global financial crisis. Although, the financial results of the bank don't tell that picture.
No. No.
Right.
No,
Now,
record profits, right?
yeah, but they're very well run businesses.
Yeah.
Right. But they're not putting a lot of risk in the books. And that stifles that process of innovation, taking risk. It becomes too hard.
Yeah. So that comes back to competition, I guess. And I mean, in my experience, there's a big gap between, bank funding and that second tier. In some ways, that second tier isn't providing enough competition with the banks. It's, too expensive. And so there's nothing in the middle kind of nipping at the heels of the banks going, we're going to offer something pretty damn close to what you're doing, unless you pick up the game.
Yeah, the nail on the head. But there's a whole lot of issues, right? And you can't it's not just about competition on the banks. Yeah, how much capital should the banks really hold? Because the banks have been told that they need to hold more capital. We want safer banks.
Yeah.
And all that's encouraged them to do is to lend more on a house.
Yeah, right.
Because it's got a lower risk weight than writing in a business or a farm loan. So the regulatory environment is discouraged where we want to see the investment being dished out. Your bankers at the moment are clouded in regulation, compliance, all this sort of stuff. There's also an issue out there across New Zealand in regard to the bankability or the business and financial acumen of many businesses.
Yeah.
They need to lift their game. It's been striking to see the underperformance of the NZX compared to global peers.
So do you think the policy changes, I mean, in one hand, they did their job. They absorbed the shock and we saw a lot less mortgagee sales and things like that than we perhaps would have, because the bank was in a better position and could hold and could ride it out and support the customer out through the other side of that. So on one hand, they've done their job, but are you kind of arguing that they've done the job too well, and or that really, yes, they needed to do that, but there also perhaps needed to be some losses somewhere that you know, we're balancing that out.
If you look at a basic principle of finance, if you're going to see a lot of volatility with an investment, you want a higher expected return on average.
Yeah.
To compensate for that volatility.
Yeah.
What we see within the bank profits is that we see some pretty eye-watering, returns.
Yep.
And we're not seeing a lot of volatility within the earnings stream. Yeah, so there's a big gap between their return on equity and their weighted average cost of capital.
Right.
And particularly when you look at the standard deviation of their profits as well. This last 12 months, case in point. Yeah, you would have thought they'd be well down. They're not well down. The provisions, the losses they've had to take have been incredibly small, which just suggests to me we've screwed the scrum too far.
Yeah.
Right? Either margins have got to come in and the return on equity down, or else the volatility of the earnings needs to be high.
Yeah.
Because there's a mismatch there at the moment.
Yeah. So for that to happen, does that have to be driven through by government adjusting some of those settings that they have, or what would motivate the banks? So how do you motivate the banks to? I mean, they got pretty bloody good. What motivates the banks to change those settings?
Well, you need to set regulatory settings, particularly in regard to how much capital banks need. I don't agree with what the Reserve Bank has done.
Right.
It's just the banks
too high, too safe.
They've just become even more defensive because the system, you get capital relief if you write a housing loan as opposed to a business loan.
Yeah.
So they haven't had to throw more money into the pie. Just reconfigured their portfolio more towards housing and less towards business.
Yeah.
But that's hardly adding to productivity growth going forward. You can't just force the banks to change. What you can do is pour a lot more, I guess, attention on the issues and ask the right questions.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't be asking the questions of the CEO. I'd be asking the questions of the chair of the board.
Yeah.
You need a lot longer than 45 minutes to go to get a little bit of deep insight in regard to what's going on.
Yeah.
Ultimately, out of this, I think banks will be the losers. All right. Because
why do you say that?
Well, because ultimately, well-being and housing needs an economic base.
Yeah.
And if we're not investing in that economic base, right, we're going to have problems 10 years down the track.
Yeah.
Open banking is been far too slow. Kiwi banks actually providing a fair bit of competition in the market.
Right.
I'd like to see a lot more transparency over, business margins. And I know every business loan is different and there's, different structures and that sort of stuff, but we can do it for housing, right? We should be able to provide a little bit more better information, or at least provide a range in regard to this is generally speaking where lending rates should be subject to these sort of parameters.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So you're saying, at the moment I can jump online and compare all the interest rates for housing loans, but it's difficult to do that with business loans.
Yeah.
So does part of that need a little bit more standardization in the types of loans that are written, so that you can be comparing, or it's just that someone needs to do it, it needs to be done?
Yeah, well, and ideally, we get the Reserve Bank to be collecting more information.
Yeah, right.
And
Yeah.
yeah, your business loans, yeah, they tend to be a little bit more unique,
Yep.
case by case. But yeah, there must be a way of setting up a survey and just where would your lending rate be for this sort of a scenario,
Yep.
so that we know where the playing field is.
Yeah, and also I think transparency around the different types of lending that are available through the different banks, whether it's trade finance or invoice finance or overdrafts versus capital, or sort of like seeing those sort of different things, because that's where some of the competition comes through, is in the type of lending that they do as opposed to the interest rates. And if that was surely that could still be displayed in terms of pros and cons of the various options.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, interesting. And really interesting what you're saying around the long-term picture actually having a negative effect on the bank, because it's impacting our overall kind of ability to produce income and therefore pay for those assets down the track.
Yeah, well, ultimately, we will end up, there will be a maverick fintech provider that just turns it on its head at some stage.
Yeah. What do you think, in terms of house prices, and I get that primarily it's supply and demand, and interest rates are having a big effect on that, but what do we need? Like long term, we've had a very classic cycle of overinflated and then flattening off, but it's like there's no stopping the 50-100 year cycle of a doubling every 10 years. And but we can also sit back and go, that's not necessarily working for us as a country, because it's encouraging perhaps too much equity going into the housing market and not into productive assets. So on one level, we want to see house prices stabilise. But can that happen? Is there anything that's going on at the moment that could help trigger a stabilisation in house pricing?
Well, house prices have been stable now for the last wee while.
Yeah, I suppose that I'm asking, how do we stop at the back end of next year the fuel going back on the fire, and then everybody going, hooray, we're off to the races again, and look at my house price going up and I feel rich, and but of course I can't afford to buy the next one either because the same problem.
Yeah, well, I guess there's two ways of looking at it. Look, one, is the economic environment for the next 10 years going to repeat the last 10, 20 or 30? Because that big long period where house prices were doubling, there was a trend lower in interest rates over a 30-year period. They went up, they went down, but the cost of finance a house was a lot lower on average across each business cycle.
And we talking interest rate, or are we talking about cost of servicing a loan against income?
Well, you look at both of them, right, because the interest rate ultimately drives the cost.
Yeah.
But what happened was that people just get a lot more debt into the equation. So serviceability threshold was high. Now, house prices have come down, so they're more affordable, but I wouldn't characterise New Zealand as having an affordable housing market.
No.
Right, so the next lift-off of the property market faces an immediate valuation challenge. My personal view is that the market will pick up, but it'll be tempered by income growth.
Yes.
Yeah, so if I think about the next 10 years, yeah, let's say income growth is per household 4.5% per year.
Right.
Yeah, that might be the new normal for house price growth. And look
Right.
at valuations up around this level.
Yeah.
The other wild card is, Chris Bishop et al. And how well they go about getting the supply side fundamentals
Yeah.
better placed. And this is not just about the release of land, the RMA, that's the cost of materials, that sort of stuff. Interesting stat out. Yeah. Where do you think is the fastest growing part of New Zealand at the moment?
I have no idea.
Selwyn, down in Christchurch.
Still.
Yep.
Interesting. I thought we were going to see a swing back towards the central city down
No,
there.
you're tending to see the other way.
Mm.
All the cities are seeing a loss of what's called internal migration.
Mm.
Yeah, people are moving out to the periphery. Wellington's losing to Kapiti Coast. It's losing up to Masterton, Horowhenua, Christchurch is Waimak,
Yeah.
and Selwyn. But Selwyn has probably got one of the most functional housing markets across New Zealand
Interesting.
in regard to the release of land and that sort of stuff. And lo and behold, it popped up as the part of New Zealand that's been seeing the fastest population growth in the last 12 months.
Interesting.
But it's been consistently strong.
So is the land being released incrementally, or is it wide open slather and it's just being developed as demand requires?
Well, way back around the Christchurch earthquake,
Yep.
they basically pushed through so much that there's no shortage of stuff.
Mm.
And we're starting to see it come through other indicators as well.
Right.
So I'm going to give you just an illustration. Yeah, Canterbury is one of few universities that's seeing role growth.
Mm.
And the anecdotes coming out of Christchurch is that it's cheaper to live in Christchurch.
Mm.
And it's all about housing.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Dunedin's been losing numbers. Victoria has lost numbers in the last couple of years.
Yeah.
Auckland's been pretty flat. Massey is back as well. But just interesting when you see a housing market that appears to be operating a lot more, it's functioning a lot better.
Yeah.
It starts to kick your other economic indicators, such as how many students that you got enrolling at your university.
So that's it for this week with Cameron, and thanks for joining us. As you know, this is going to be dropped both as a video on the website, but also a podcast, and it may well be transcribed into a blog if you rather sit there reading something. But we are going to be putting a lot more effort into this channel next year, broadening the range of topics, broadening the speakers, and doing everything we can to drive a conversation of innovation. So thanks for joining us, and we'll catch you on the next one.